Hi. So today I'm going to do a video on the slave trade in Britain. Originally, I was going to do another different video. I was going to do slavery in Britain as a general rule, but I thought because it's a lot and I want to get into it in detail. I thought I'd divide it into one, the slave trade and the abolition of it, and tomorrow's video is going to be on the abolition of slavery itself. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because um, it's, it's a really interesting topic and it's not talked about enough. I mean, yeah, a lot of focus gets put on the abolition of slavery in the U.S., but also in Britain, and that was extremely controversial. And there were huge advances in terms of liberating slaves and key people that someone needs to shine a light on it. I'm not saying I'm that person, but at least I can, record a little video of it. And before I get started, the reason why I have my computer with me and not like previous videos where I just don't have anything with me is because I've obviously read up on this, like I do always, but there's so many facts and it's such an important topic that I don't want to get anything wrong. Because sometimes when I'm about to record, I forget stuff, then I'm a bit like, eh. So I decided to have my computer with me to try and minimize that. So yeah, let's get right into it. Well, between 1662 and 1807, which were the years slave trade was present, because 1662 was really when the exploration and the colonization period started under Charles II, and 1807 was under George III. Well, that was the period where slave trade was happening. It ended in 1807. And well, British and British colonial ships. But if I say British, I am referring to Britain and its colonies. It's just saying British and British colonial. It's a lot. So from here on, I'm going to say just British, but I don't mean only Britain. Anyway, they purchased approximately 3,415,500 slaves. And out of those, well, only 2,900,000 survived. That means 500,000 died just on the journey between those periods. 500,000 people on ships, and that's not even mentioning the ones that died after they reached the destination. That's literally just on the ships. 500,000 people, 500,000. The only country or territories that really had more of a role in the transatlantic slave trade were Portugal and Brazil. And in terms of the British trade, London was really the biggest export, well, like the biggest player in the slave trade up until the 1730s. Then it changes within Britain, but London didn't what I mean by saying that by 1730, London stopped being the main one. I'm not saying it just stopped trading slaves. It just kept on going, but other places in Britain overtook it. And so from 1699 to 1907, so again, by the end it's George III, but by the beginning it is William III. Mary II had already died by that point. There were over 12,000 voyages to other territories in terms of slave trade. And a quarter of those, so 3,000, were from London. And I don't have the data from 1662 to 1699, but just, okay, let me put this into context. So, I mean, 12,000 is way too many. I mean, like, it should be zero. It's way too, you know what I mean? But considering during those years there were 12,000 voyages and there were 3,400,000 slaves transported between that period and 30 years before, of which 500,000 died. Like, just get the numbers. And don't just think about the numbers in general. Just think how each number, so each number is a person, like an actual person, had to go through that. So really the peak in slave trade was in the 1780s. So right about when the Revolutionary War was ending. And well, society was becoming more and more concerned with the moral implications behind slavery. And so abolition movements started emerging. Right from the beginning, people opposed slavery, but from the 1780s onwards, these abolitionist movements became more and more prominent. And by 1776, well, the Commons actually passed not passed, but debated a motion saying that, and I quote, "the slave trade is contrary to the laws of God and the rights of men." 1776. They debated this motion. It wouldn't end for 31 years after that. Still 31 more years. It took them over 100 years to say this. Over 100 years. So I'm now going to name some people who were really important. Well, first of all, is Ignatius Sancho. He was born in the Caribbean on a slave ship in 1729. He was orphaned at the age of 2 because, the conditions were absolutely horrible. And then when he arrived to Britain, he was given to a family of 3 sisters in Greenwich. He, by pure chance, pure luck, met the Duke of Montagu. And he was impressed by the child's intelligence, so he, encouraged the education and encouraged him to, be his own person, don't just serve others. Then when Montagu died in 1749, Sancho managed to persuade his widow to take him in and take him away from the sisters, and she did. He actually got to work. He got hired as a butler, and then later on he would establish a grocery store in Westminster selling slave-produced products, which is ironic, but it's horrible, but anyway. And he managed to get a vote. He managed to, start associating himself with people in high circles and just, becoming involved with influential people. Then when he died in 1780, he got an obituary, which makes him insignificant, but he was the first African in Britain to receive an obituary. The first person. I'm talking 1780. Then we have Olaudah Equiano. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. He was more of rather than any political movements or any personal experience, which he had, the reason he is so prominent in terms of British abolition is because of his autobiography. After he was captured in West Africa, he ends his slavery and bought his own freedom. He wrote the interesting narrative and other writings around 1789. And this, it just became so key in terms of abolitionist literature that abolitionist movements from then onwards used this autobiography to prove their point and educate themselves. So, of course, by late 1780s, early 1790s, Parliament was facing a lot of criticism for slave trade. And while they did manage to pass legislation that reduced the number of slaves on an individual ship. But what does that do? It just reduces the amount of people, but increases the number of voyages, I guess. If I were a slave owner, I would just invest in a new boat and carry the remaining people there. That literally solves nothing. It just slows it down a bit, but it shouldn't be slowed down, it should be stopped. And then from 1791 and to 1800, around 1,340 voyages emerged from British ports. Those are for 9 years. 1,009 years out of a total of 12,000 recorded ones. And in those 9 years, 400,000 Africans left to the Americas. 400,000 out of the 3,400,000. Meaning in the 130 years before that, 3 million. And God knows how many of those survived. The voyage, I'm not even talking about living there, just the voyage. Then in 1798 alone, just 1 year, 150 ships departed from Liverpool to West Africa to get slaves. This is not even the main port of England. It's Liverpool, not even London. And 150 ships in 1 year to get slaves for trade. And the reason is because, they lost the colonies, but there were still they lost the American colonies, there were still other places, say in the Caribbean, they needed slaves. So demand was still high. So, of course, they needed supply. Then we have Thomas Clarkson and William Wilberforce. Now, these two men, I have no idea why their names are not well known. They should be. Both of them. So, Clarkson, he was this campaigner and lobbyist for, the end of slave trade. And he actually, Father Time, it's extremely impressive, made a study of the horrors of the trade and just published it. Like, published his findings and just, showed to the world the horrors that were happening right there and then. And he actually, so this is awesome, he went around Europe and gave speeches, gave awareness to the abolitionist movement that was going on. Toward Europe to just spread the word. And it was him that resulted in the creation of a mass movement supporting, abolitionism. And then William Wilberforce, again, really extremely significant guy. And it's honestly criminal that they don't teach his name in history lessons. Well, he was the person to promote abolitionism in Parliament. The person. I'm not saying a person. No. He was instrumental. Thanks to Clarkson's campaign, by 1806, 1807, this whole abolitionist idea was huge, and of course Parliament had to talk about it. And actually managed to campaign for legislation to be passed, ending the slave trade. And this passed the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Both houses. Parliament passed it. And then it was even handed on to the king, who signed the Royal Assent. And from 1st of May of 1807, slave trade was illegal. It took them 140 years, 145 years to end the slave trade, but they finally did it because of William Wilberforce. And I mean, the thing is, yeah, slave trade was not illegal. Slavery wasn't. So plantations were still up and running, not only in Britain but in the colonies. And so the problem was nowhere near the end. Like it wasn't even over, not even close. And yeah, they won in terms of abolition of slave trade, but they still needed to abolish slavery. Emancipation wasn't even, touched upon until 1838, and even then there was no actual compensation. No one apologized, and not even a simple apology would do, fully compensate. There was nothing, literally nothing. More on that tomorrow. So, by the late 1700s, 18th century, this slave trade abolition movement was, quite strong. And so it started to gain momentum. Well, people got ideas. They don't have the news as we have them today, but word still traveled around. They knew a revolution happened in the Americas, forming the United States against the British. The French Revolution was going on, so that was working. Why shouldn't they have their own revolution and overthrow the British? They've done it before. Why shouldn't we? So, in Haiti, that's exactly what they did in Saint-Domingue. So, we go to the 23rd of August, 1791. So now in the island of Saint-Domingue, which is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, enslaved Africans just erupted, just try to, start a revolution. Saint-Domingue was the first island to declare, independence, and only the second independent nation in the Western Hemisphere. First one being, the U.S. So, by that time, they had become one of the colonies that was producing the most amount of money. It was extremely wealthy, and, the French, the Spanish, the British, they like that. And there were so many factors involving this revolution, including, like I said, the French Revolution, which called for liberté, égalité, and fraternité. Pardon my French, that does mean liberty, equality, and fraternity. So I'm going to give you some names. First we have, first it's only him, Toussaint Louverture. Again, pardon my French, I'm so sorry. So, the Haiti Revolution full on started a war. Just full on 13 years of civil war in Haiti. And, they were literally enslaved people there were fighting for their freedom. And it's ridiculous that, first of all, the war lasted for, 13 years. But it's actually ridiculous that it even happened at all because they should not be enslaved. And this guy, Toussaint Louverture, he was one of the most prominent commanders in the revolution. And under him, they managed to defeat these superpowers. Britain, France, Spain. These three countries had vast armies, resources, whatever. Did everything, and under the Louverture, they managed to be victorious. He died in 1803. He didn't, live to see the end of slave trade in Britain or end of emancipation, for that matter. But they kept on fighting, and on the 1st of January 1804, Haiti was formally an independent republic. And I think I heard somewhere that the French, the Spanish, and the British actually, went to demand compensations for the war, for the loss of property, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, it's the Haiti Revolution. It's so important not just because they got independence and the slaves won. It's because it's the only revolution in which slaves won. The only one. And of course, it did become a symbol of resistance for slaves in other countries. And, well, by the time it ended in 1804, the transatlantic slave trade was mostly over. I'm not even talking about people getting tired. No, first of all, you have the whole abolition movement in Britain itself, but the Haitian Revolution, that just made me think, oh crap, we could have that in Britain, and we can't have that. And, well, International Day for the remembrance of the slave trade and its abolition is celebrated on the 23rd of August, the day of the Haitian Revolution. And it's a way to remember the proclamation of the first black state, Haiti. And there's museums dedicated to this. There is a ton of stuff, but it is a shame it's not taught in history lessons. Because I've been to a British school, all my secondary education, and primary for that matter. I've never heard of it. I literally learned about the Haiti Revolution 2 days ago. No, not even that. A day ago. I've heard of it, the names are around, but actually looking into it and what happened? 34 hours ago. And I'm 18. And I've been to a British education all my life. And yeah, I've done the American Civil War, and I've done the slave trade, but I've done it once. At the same time, I've done the tears 4 times. And yeah, I know the tears from front to back, because I've done them over and over again. What about the slave trade? It's equally important, if not more so, because of the controversies and political, things that are happening right now, which are ridiculous, by the way. And we're still not, teaching about this kinds of stuff. It should be right up there with the curriculum. You can't have children learning about a fat king who, changed their religion and had 6 wives, and not have them learn about one of the biggest crimes against humanity in history. I don't get it. But yeah, tomorrow I'm going to do a video on the actual end of slave trade, not slave trade, slavery itself, because it did happen in 1838, which is a few years. I mean, it is 27 years before the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in the U.S. It wasn't the first country to abolish slavery, but it's a really significant country, and people don't really talk about the end of slavery in the United States. So I thought I'd focus it more on Britain, also by request. So I'm gonna leave it there. So you have that to look forward to tomorrow, and yeah, that is it. So I hope you liked it. I hope you found it interesting. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.